Hi, my name is Juanita. I've been a member of Tremont Evangelical Church for several years and consider all the people here part of my family. I hope you have a chance to check us out. This video is my testimony about coming to know God. If you see me at Tremont when you come to visit and you remember seeing me, come say hi. If you have questions or want further clarification about the things that I talk about, feel free to ask me. That's why the video is here, and I'm happy to chat with you about it. So I'd like to start by saying that around the age of 12, with all the experiences and knowledge and understanding that I have about God and about the world around me, I came to decide that I didn't come from some microbial soup or from some cosmic blast or I think that we're all way too complicated, and that we were miraculously created by a creator. And so at the age of 12, I gave my heart to God, and what follows is what I came to know about who He is and what He has for my life and maybe even your life. As God would have it, my life and your life too, I think, started with your mom. It's funny how things work out that way, but my mom was born in the 30s in North Dakota to German immigrants. She was the youngest of 7 children and raised primarily in an orphanage because her parents were both alcoholics and unable to care for their 7 children because of all the things that comes along with addiction and alcoholism. My mother escaped the orphanage by marrying a much older man when she was 14 years old. Can't even comprehend being married at 14, but at 15, she gave birth to my big brother. When she was 17, she gave birth to me, and shortly thereafter divorced because of her age and her lack of education, and the kinds of jobs she could get, and having to take care of 2 young children. It just wasn't possible, and she put both my big brother and I in foster care. From infancy to about the age of 3, I lived in at least 3 different foster homes that I can remember, but none of them were abusive, so that was a good thing. Living in foster care taught me that important people in your life aren't going to stay around very long. That was something that I learned and was deeply embedded in who I was, or I am even to this day as a person. It's hard to believe that people that I care about will always be there. My mother married the second time when she was about 20 years old, and I was 3. She and my new father picked my brother and I up from our final foster care placement in the middle of the night. We lived at the Oregon coast, and my father's family primarily lived in the Dalles. So we left the Oregon coast and came to the Dalles. And for a very short period of time, we lived with my new dad's sister and her husband until my mom and dad could find a place for us to live. We probably didn't live there more than a week, a few days, and my parents found a house for us to live in. But in those few days, in the middle of the night, at the age of 3, my uncle, who I didn't know at the time, came into the room at night and put his hands where no uncle's hands should ever be. It was very scary and very ugly, and it changed my life forever. I didn't talk about it to anybody ever because I didn't understand it, and in my small little mind of 3 years old, adults were the ones who made the rules. They were the ones who told us that this is wrong or this is right. So I assumed whatever he was doing was right, but it felt very scary and very ugly, and I really didn't ever know how to talk about it to anybody. So it got locked away deep inside. My new father was and is the best dad any little girl could hope for. My mom really picked a winner. He always treated me like he loved me and cared about me just like his very own little girl. Even when Mom had my little sister, I was 5 years old, and had a new little sister, and he never treated me or her any differently. I would say he even kind of favored me. Then my mom had my little brother when I was 7, and things were going well. Around the age of 8, my parents started to bicker and fight and argue. And under normal circumstances, for any little kid, hearing your mom and dad not get along is a scary feeling. But remember, in my mind, people that I loved didn't stick around, and when they started to argue, I was very, very fearful. I remember one day clearly coming home from school, and my mom was in the kitchen with my dad, and things were very serious. My mom's suitcase was packed in the middle of the room, and I asked my dad, "What's going on?" And I'll never forget my dad's words. It was, "Well, your mom was going to leave, but now she's not." Within weeks of that event, we started attending a small church in the Dalles. And it didn't take long before God changed my parents' marriage and our lives. God brought peace to our home. My parents started talking to each other in a way that was loving and kind, and there wasn't any more yelling and arguing, and they treated each other with kindness and respect. So in my mind, God had created a miracle. When I was 17, my mom, and I remember now, my mom was 17 when she gave birth to me, and when I was 17, she died of cervical cancer. The doctor said she probably had the cancer 10 years before they found it. She never went to the doctor. And my brother and sister were 10 and 12 at the time. It never, ever occurred to me that my mom would die. I just didn't believe that God would allow my mom to die when I was 17. You can imagine I prayed a lot, and I just didn't believe that it would happen. The doctors said there was nothing more they could do. And what I realized is that God's answers are not always yes, that sometimes God's answers are no. I really struggled with how that could happen to me, or how that God could let that happen. But bad things happen to good people. I married right out of high school, my high school sweetheart. I was 18 years old, graduated in June and married in August. And I gave birth to my daughter when I was 19. I was a virgin when I got married, and shocked when I discovered I was pregnant. Very, very naive. Not that I didn't know how you got pregnant, it just never occurred to me that I would get pregnant, I guess. I don't know. I married my high school sweetheart because my dad told me that he thought it was the right thing to do. Now you have to remember, my dad was trying to survive with 4 kids and a wife who was gone, and he just felt like it was a practical thing to do, getting married for me, and I did, and needless to say, it didn't last long. A divorce was so against everything that I believed in, and I couldn't face God and divorce my husband. So I walked away from God. I became involved very quickly with a man who had also walked away from God, and he was an alcoholic. But I didn't know that at the time. I was 22 and in love, and again, very naive. Over the next 8 years of my life, it was very chaotic, very tumultuous. But I had promised God I would make it work, no matter what. I was so ashamed of my bad decisions and behavior of the past. When I was about 30, I started having night terrors. I think most people know what night terrors are, but if not, suffice to say that they're like nightmares on steroids. So I was screaming, running, breaking things, jumping out of windows, hurting myself and hurting the people that I was with. And long story short, the event that happened when I was 3 years old, that I had tucked away in the back of my mind, came out, and it just caused such havoc in my life that when I started to reveal what I thought might be causing the problems for me to my husband and then later on to my father, which was really hard. But things started to resolve for me. Things started to calm down. I could sleep more without worrying about having a night terror. They didn't go away completely, but I did start to heal and slowly resolve. And what I learned is that there was more that I needed to do, and part of that was forgiveness. There was a piece that I was missing that I didn't find until later. When my daughter was 30 and I was about 50, she was diagnosed with late-stage ovarian cancer. Just like my mother was diagnosed at 30 with late-stage cervical cancer. She and her husband had been trying for several years to have kids, and it just wasn't working. And then suddenly there was this diagnosis, and we kind of figured out, wow, that's probably why you're not getting pregnant. My heart was broken and I was terrified. I was not only that I could lose my daughter, but that I'll never be a grandma, which was definitely something I wanted, but more than anything, I wanted my daughter to be okay. I'll never forget one day she was sitting on the couch and we were just talking about it, and she just said, "Mom, why is this happening to me?" And I wanted to have an answer for her. And in my heart, the same sort of questions were tumbling around, but I knew at that moment that God was not going to take my daughter. And I told her, I said, you know, someday when you're well and you're healthy again, you're going to be able to share your story with some young mother who is scared, and she's going to be going through the same thing that you're going through, and you're going to be able to share your story with her. And that's what this is all about, because I knew that God was not going to take her from me. She is happy and healthy, and I am a proud grandmother of an 11-year-old grandson. So God's answer was yes. I'm so grateful. People told me that God doesn't answer their prayers, but I want to tell you that He always answers your prayers. It's not always yes. It can be no, or it can be not now. But whatever His answer is, He knows the beginning, He knows the middle, and He knows the end. And if you trust Him, He tells us that He will work all things out for good. We don't see it right away sometimes. After years of prayer for my husband, he has returned to God. He has nearly 30 years of sobriety, and we've been together for 45 years. My mom's life was tragic and short, but she did the very best that she could with what she had. She gave me a dad who loves me unconditionally and is always a source of support and guidance for me. Bad things happen to good people. Life happens. God doesn't cause bad things, but He can use the bad things in our lives to help us be better people. God has taught me that dark, ugly secrets locked away never ever heal. They fester and they rot and they turn your life upside down. Most recently, I came to understand that God is the creator of forgiveness. And forgiveness is the true gift for healing. It isn't possible for us to forgive some things. There are some things that seems just too much to forgive. But for God, who is the creator of forgiveness, when we give it to Him, we can forgive the unforgivable. I haven't had a night terror for nearly a year, and that is a miracle. I came to know God when my parents turned to God to save their marriage. We went to church and I learned more about God. I learned why I was created and what He expected of me. When I was about 12, I decided I needed Him because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't be perfect. And God wants us to be as perfect as we can. But God has used the mistakes to draw me closer to Him and mold me into who He wants me to be. I look back on the struggles I've overcome, some of them self-inflicted and some of them inflicted on me. And I marvel at how life has worked out because God has used them. He has used all of life's tragedies and mistakes and struggles to show me and other people that with Him all things will work out for good. He loved me before I even knew Him, and He's not finished with me yet. I hope to meet you at Tremont. It's a great family of people seeking to know God better. Every day, come join us. I'd love to meet you.